Hi, I'm Anais, and I'm really glad that you're here and taking a look at the information that I'm offering about a breakthrough in a new health paradigm. I'm going to ask you to read through this page, and the important thing that I would like to share with you is I'm really just like anybody else. When I was a child, an interesting thing happened. I was by myself. I was waiting in my dentist's office, just for a dental checkup, getting my teeth cleaned. And as I was waiting, I was, looking around on the table for a magazine to pick up. And there was a magazine there, and on the title cover was Life, Life. So I picked it up to look more closely because that's the word that was showing up foremost underneath the magazines that were on top of it. And I picked up this magazine, used to be a very popular magazine. And on the cover was a picture of a child naked and on fire. And it was a black and white photograph that had been taken after the bombing of Hiroshima. And I was horrified. I couldn't believe my eyes. There was no one else in the waiting room. There was no one else to talk to. And I looked at that picture, and a lot of things came to mind. One of the first things was, who did this? Why would they do this? Why would they do this to a child? What happened to this child? And so I opened the magazine and I began to read, and some of those questions were answered, but not all of them. And so before I got to go sit in the dentist chair, I had come to the realization that something like that could only happen in hell. I had been attending church, Sunday school, and we had all been given information about hell and what hell is and how you get to hell and what happens when you're in hell. And that picture that I had seen on the cover of a magazine called Life made me aware that here on planet Earth, we are living in hell. Not all of us, but most of us are. That inspired me, that moment in the dentist's office. I didn't know it at the time, but that moment inspired me for decisions that I made for the rest of my life. And the decision that I made was, if I am in fact living in hell, then I will find a way out. And I will find a way out for others in addition to myself. I don't know if there's a way to put an end to hell, but I feel inside of me there's a way for me to get out. And there's a way for others also to get out once they realize where we are. And so my life story unfolded. It's been an incredible adventure. I've been really, really, really blessed, as I like to say. I don't like to use the word blessed because it really is be less when you look at the spelling, and that's not me. So I use the word blessed. And eventually things unfolded. And when I was much older, 30 years later, fast forward, I was sitting in the hallway of a hospital in Moscow, Russia. And this was when the Soviet Union was on the brink of collapse. I was waiting for an interview with the director of the men's burn ward, Dr. Gerzimova, and a colleague who I just met. I'd come over with my own funding because there was this little part of me once I awakened to my healing gifts that said, I want to work with burn patients. And so I sat there in the hall outside Dr. Gerasimovan's office while Dr. Nikolai Harsov was inside chatting with her, hoping to pave the way for me to be able to do my healing work on that men's burn ward. And one of the things that Dr. Harsov had said to me while he and I were sitting together outside Dr. Gerasimova's office, he said, don't mention to her that you never worked with burns. And I looked at him. I didn't know what to make of that, but I didn't worry about it. And while I was sitting there with a young woman named Natasha, who had agreed to be my interpreter because I don't speak Russian, someone rolled a gurney down the hall and they actually parked it in front of us. And there was a body underneath a blanket. The body was covered. So we were sitting there with someone who had died from their burns, sitting right there with us. And Natasha looked at me and she said, I don't know that if I can do this. I don't know that I can do this job. And I took her hand in mine and I looked into her eyes and I say, Natasha, all you have to do is see with the eyes of your heart. And I said, I think you're going to be okay, but let's find out. And if you're not, you're not. Dr. Harzov came out. I went in to speak with Dr. Larissa Gerasimova, a lovely woman. We had tea. We talked about many things. She showed me on a tour of the burn ward some of the new technologies that they were using. They were using negative ion lamps, and they were doing all kinds of things that they could do because they had no money. She hadn't been paid in months, and her salary as director of that ward was the equivalent of $40 a month. Now, this was in 1991 when the Soviet Union was collapsing. So we spoke of many things. She asked about my work. I explained to her what I could of it. And she was a very open-minded woman. She even asked me about extrasense. Do you believe in extrasense? I said, well, I actually have extrasense. I am clairaudient, I'm clairvoyant, I'm clairsentient. Do you believe in UFOs? I said, well, I don't know. I don't think we're the only life in the universe, but I haven't been in a spaceship, so I can't really comment on that. But I had been through a very, very profound shift in my own consciousness. But that profound shift took me closer to that 9-year-old child in the dentist office, looking at the cover of Life magazine, wondering, how do we help someone who has been so incredibly hurt? Because in that photograph, that child was still standing, her hands were on fire, she was screaming in pain, but she was moving, walking on her feet. I don't know what became of that child, but I know what became of me. And I know what can become of you. And I know after the pandemic that we have an entirely new journey ahead of us. And so I do hope you will buy my book and you will give consideration to some of the things that I've learned in the last 30 years. It's 30 years this year that I was in that hospital. It'll be 30 years in the fall. I was there in November of 1991. And Dr. Gerasimova never asked me if I had worked with burn patients before. So I didn't have to lie. I wouldn't have done it anyway. All right, so you'll see more information on this page, but please just go to the link below, join my list. You'll get an email confirmation, and then you'll decide whether there's another way for us to get to know each other and to work together, especially if you are an open-minded physician or holistic practitioner. But I do hope that you and I will begin to develop a relationship and that we will be part of bringing in a new paradigm of health and wellness.